Hello, and welcome to In the Cool of the Day, and today's segment of Heart to Heart. You are watching part one of a two-part series. I'm your host, Pastor Denise Wilson. My guests today are Ms. Nichelle Terrell, the HIV/AIDS Prevention Coordinator from the Alexandria Health Department, Dr. Nathaniel Brooks, Vice Facilitator of the Northern Virginia Clergy Council for the Prevention of AIDS and HIV, and Pastor Robert Cheeks, the Senior Pastor of the Shiloh Baptist Church of McLean, Virginia. Our topic today is HIV in the community and the church. Welcome to Heart to Heart.
Thank you.
I want to start off today with a scripture. I think it's relevant to our topic today. Galatians 4, starting with verse 12. It says, I plead with you, brothers, become like me, for I became like you. You have done me no wrong. As you know, it was because of an illness that I first preached the gospel to you. Even through my illness was a trial to you. You did not treat me with contempt or scorn. Instead, you welcomed me as if I were an angel of God, as if I were Christ Jesus himself. What has happened to all your joy? I can testify that. If you could have done so, you would have torn out your own eyes and given them to me. Have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? This subject is very important to me because I had a close relative, die of the AIDS virus. I want you guys to tell me a little bit about yourselves and how you became involved in the HIV awareness movement. Starting with you, Pastor Brooks.
Hi, I became involved with the HIV epidemic in and around about 8 years ago in Baltimore City. One of my relatives was thought to have this disease, and I wanted to know more about it. Didn't know much about it. I've always heard about it. So I began to volunteer, and I did a field study. At the time, I was at Virginia Union University, and we had to do a field study in which we go into work with an organization and do an intern. Well, I interned with STAR, Sisters Together in Reaching, in Baltimore, which handles part of the epidemic, the people that are affected and affected by HIV and AIDS. From that, I learned so much about the community, as well as the various aspects that people are affected through HIV and AIDS. So about 8-9 years ago, I've been dealing with this.
Ms. Terrell, would you like to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the HIV awareness movement?
Sure. I was working at the Alexandria Health Department doing grant management, and I would attend different meetings from the Northern Virginia Consortium. They had different committees, and I started attending meetings for the Prevention Committee. And just doing different events with them, I started to get more and more involved and doing more and more events, and then started putting on stuff for the city and the Northern Virginia Prevention Committee, and just really going out there, getting to know the people who are infected with HIV and AIDS, and just really falling in love with the job, the people, the cause, and eventually my position has been changed to where I just do all prevention work. So I get to deal with the churches, the community, schools, and stuff like that. And I've been doing that for about 11 years now.
Great.
Yes.
Pastor Cheeks?
Yes, Dr. Wilson, it all started when I served at Macedonia Baptist Church, Arlington, Virginia, as the ministerial assistant to Pastor Leonard Hamlin. We were in the process of developing a ministry that, in addition to the support group that was already in place, prevention ministry that would even work with the community and even abroad, with the National Institute of Health and so forth and so on. And it all started there, but I really didn't get really in growth, or rather, excuse me, I didn't really get, I didn't dive deeply into it until I became the pastor at Shiloh over now 5 years. But in the beginning years, we got introduced to the group that was forming out of the partnership, the Northern Virginia Clergy Council, that was working in partnership with the Fairfax County Health Department. It was from that point where it really began to grab a hold of me, realizing that we must do our part, particularly as the Black church, how it is the disparities are affecting the Black communities. And the numbers are different, and so that just gripped me and wouldn't let me go. Just as we are to minister to all walks of life holistically, that became my charge, to not neglect this area. As we would deal with other illnesses and sicknesses on the surface, we wouldn't deal with this one on the surface. We very rarely would even hear it discussed. And just so in my context, there are a lot of individuals who were behind it, who were supportive of it and have been affected closely or indirectly with it. I never had any family members or close friends who had to deal with this disease. However, I felt that it was our call. In the gospel ministry of Christ Jesus, it's our call to serve those who are helpless and those who are hopeless.
That's right.
And so that's what kind of drew me in. And then also the council. The council was doing such a great work in its development stage and its inception. And so I became a part of that, and that really helped me to help carry the banner for Shallow.
Great. We all are looking for statistics in the area. People always want to know about the content of statistics. So does someone have the statistics of HIV in the area?
What we have here, Reverend Brooks was kind enough to pull up, something that we typically use around Black AIDS Day, which is in February, and it's Blacks account for 13% of the national population and make up 45% of new HIV infections and 46% of those living with HIV. 8 out of 10 women living with HIV are Black. So that's some of the important statistics that we like to point out when reaching out to the Black community and letting them know exactly why HIV is an issue in our community, that we are getting it in our community. It's not just the gay white man's disease as it used to be portrayed as.
I'm glad you said that because a lot of the people would want you to think that it is a gay disease, but it's actually more than just that. It is a disease that affects a lot of people, and we want to make sure that we delve a little deeper into what it means to us as the African American community, not just a gay community or lesbian community. We want to talk about the community in general and specifically the church. So with that being said, Pastor Brooks, what do you think the biggest problem in the community and the church is regarding the HIV, regarding awareness?
Denial that it even exists. I'll start within the church. I think that the Black church do not want to confront it head on because of denial. And we live in a world where medical research is well advanced. So we believe that because we're advanced in other areas of research, that this epidemic has been taken care of, it's slowly declining, and/or we believe that certain areas are not affected. And it's far from the truth. And when you operate in denial, you're setting yourself up for a lot of failure. The church must begin to look at the statistics. And I want to point out from the statistics that Ms. Terrell read that those statistics are actually statistics for people that are tested. So they could be a lot higher because people are not being tested or they don't know their status. Within the community, because the church is in denial, it does not set up a presence in a community to take authority over that is within that community. And so if it's not being spoken about by the church, which the church still today stands as the modern day spokesperson for many communities. It is the outreach center. It is the place where people come to be encouraged. If they're not talking about it, then hey, they're not concerned, so why should we be concerned? And so the community and the church is operating in denial that the disease is non-existent or is in slow or is in fast decline.
Now, is that just in the African American community, or do you think that that's in the community in general?
No, I think that's in the community in general. because we live in such a cosmopolitan area because we have mixed races, we have people that is just not in one community. African American community is in white, it's in the Asians, it's in Hispanics, it's in the whole cosmopolitan area. We must address the area, whether we're the Black church or the Anglo church or the Episcopalian church. It must be addressed.
That's right. I agree with that. Ms. Terrell, would you like to piggyback on that question?
I do agree with Reverend Brooks' denial, but I also think stigma is an issue within the community. We need to get past how the person acquired HIV, their lifestyle. Are they heterosexual, homosexual? Are they sleeping with this person, same sex? We need to get past all of that and deal with the healing of the person, and that's part of the reason people don't come to the church, because of the comments or the reception that they will receive or not receive. So I really think stigma is another one of the big issues.
Okay, so when you say stigma, give me just a brief what you're referring to as far as the stigma.
The assumption that the person is homosexual or that they've been promiscuous or drug users, and all the negatives that come with that. That's what stigma is all about.
Can I interrupt? I think that in 2013 we have to get over that stigma of how you acquired it. People are sexual. Kids have sex, adults have sex, people have sex, dogs have sex. And so it should not be any surprise when people say, hey, I acquired it through sex. And you don't have to raise a banner, people having sex, you have kids out here. And I think that we stay on the topic that, oh my God, they're having sex, and because they're having sex, they acquired AIDS. No, they acquired it because they was maybe have been promiscuous, and or they didn't take the time to use a contraceptive, or they probably did use a contraceptive and it was faulty at using it. And so many ways to get it. I think that the stigma and how how a person feels matters.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back within the cool of the day and this section of Heart to Heart. Hello, I am Pastor Denise Wilson. I want to thank you for watching In the Cool of the Day and our upcoming segment on Heart to Heart. On Saturday, October the 19th, 2013, please join us for our 4th annual Women's Prayer Breakfast, a call for the wailing women, sponsored by the Wilson Ministry Foundation. It will be held at 9 o'clock at the Crown Plaza Hotel, 2200 Centerville Road, Herndon, Virginia. Our guest speaker will be Reverend Victoria Venable from the Cathedral of Christ Baptist Church in Capitol Heights, Maryland. For more information, please go to www.denisewilson.org or call us at 571-241-7914. I look forward to seeing you there. Welcome back. You are watching In the Cool of the Day and today's segment of Heart to Heart. I'm your host, Pastor Denise Wilson, and I'm here with my guests, Ms. Nichelle Terrell, Dr. Nathaniel Brooks, and Pastor Robert Cheeks. And our topic today is HIV in the community and the church. Pastor Cheeks, before we left, we were asking the question to our guests, and I want you to answer. What do you think the biggest problem in the community is and in the church regarding HIV?
Okay. In addition to what Ms. Terrell and Dr. Brooks mentioned in terms of stigma and denial, I'd also add the lack of knowledge. As the Bible simply suggests that people perish for the lack of knowledge. I believe it was AIDS.gov that says 1 million people in the nation, United States, is affected with HIV. 1 out of every 5 lives with HIV but does not know they have it. One of the leading causes for African American women between the ages of 24 and 35 or 34 is AIDS amongst African American community and women. And so therefore you have individuals who, one, don't necessarily know they have it, and they're still indulging in, promiscuous activities or maybe dealing with drug paraphernalia, sharing needles, so forth and so on. There are other ways of spreading the disease. However, just having a basic understanding of it. One, knowing your status. Two, knowing how to deal with individuals who are infected. And then those who are living infected, how to continue to live in a successful manner, and a safe manner, if you will. And then as the community, those amongst those who may be infected or the families affected, how to continue to love on them. But to do that, we have to gain knowledge about the disease. And that's one thing that we do not have. And that's why you see the differences between other ethnicity groups, where I believe in our community, we just don't know too much about it. I mean, if one thing it is, we do know it's a gay man disease.
That's right.
Or gay men who are on the down low, if you will. They have women in their lives, but are still sleeping with men behind the backs. That's the main thing that we first think of, or they're doing drugs. But there are other ways and things like that. We just need to arm ourselves with the knowledge.
Good point, good point. I'm going to stay with you. How can we have a healthy talk about HIV in the church, or is it even possible to have a healthy talk about HIV in the church?
How can we have a healthy talk, and is it possible? I'll come in the backwards for that. I do believe it is possible. The way to do it, and I can only speak from context, but it depends on your context and the culture of the context. Culture is affected, or I would say culture is influenced by leadership. And so if leadership is willing to deal with not only these challenging topics that are taboo, things that we wouldn't necessarily deal with in the church, if they can deal with and talk about those at this level in a manner that stems from them realizing they have their own issues, then it can be appropriately addressed. If we cannot have a healthy conversation if we're not willing to deal with our own issues. And so when you start to deal with things like Dr. Brooks mentioned, sex, a lot of people don't want to talk about that because they have issues in sex or have had issues with sex. And so they don't want to deal with that because it always points back to you. But if you're willing to deal with those issues and be transparent and vulnerable in those moments in sharing, I think you can have a healthy dialogue. Because when you deal with this, you have to deal with a lot of things that come around this particular topic.
Dr. Brooks?
Yes, I think that is possible. I piggyback from what Dr. Cheeks said about the culture. I want to add to that is culture and conscience. I think that if the culture of the church is not affected by the conscience of the people, then the conscience of the church will not address it. I think that in order to address it, it must be a healthy dose of compassion. Because in order for, if we take the example of Jesus Christ, when he dealt with individuals, he had compassion for them. He had compassion for them because he understood their condition. With that compassion, he also dealt with people on an individual basis. That means he did not judge one person from the other. So when he dealt with Lazarus, he did not judge him off of the basis with the woman at the well. He did not date with the woman caught in adultery. He gave each one of them their respect with compassion for them, and he understood their condition. And I think the church, in order to have this discussion, it must be compassion as the root of it. Not so much compassion for compassion for the individual, but also compassion for those that are going to be, that's affected and effected. Because just because you're dealing with individual, you're also dealing with that person's child or that person's spouse that love these people. So compassion must be holistic. And also you must be knowledgeable. You cannot have a healthy discussion talking about things you don't know. You have to be well informed, you have to have the knowledge, and you have to understand what it is. It's nothing like going into a conversation, going and taking out something and just killing people with words.
And Dr. Denise, let me say this, Dr. Wilson too, and adding on to that, the atmosphere has to be right. You have to kind of take time to prepare people for that kind of conversation to have it. Because you could be at one length of saying, I want to do this, but it may not be the right time, because then you can start talking about it, and then everyone begins to be more closed about it. But if you spend time creating the atmosphere where we can trust one another and know that we're going to handle this in an appropriate manner, and that if things are shared, it won't leave out of here. Like they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. If we can have that level of conversation, which will help us have the healthy conversation, then it all depends on how we establish the atmosphere, meaning individuals who are ready to be receptive and open enough to discuss that, because some people still want the church just to have one type of atmosphere, one type of way, not necessarily do anything except this one thing, and that's it. So you have to take time to make sure the people are ready to receive that kind of conversation and then go from there.
Well, I'm gonna just delve a little deeper with both of you, because you are pastors in churches in the area. I want to talk a little bit, because you have congregants that are older, that this subject is very taboo for them. How do you address this subject without being offensive to your older congregants? Because this isn't something that they've always dealt with.
Right.
They have not dealt with it, but honestly, statistics, without putting out any statistics, but there are many elders that are getting HIV and AIDS now. And so, I want to be candid with this. While they are going to get the blue pill to have sex, they're not protecting themselves. And so therefore, the elders can get HIV and AIDS. HIV and AIDS are not just only for young people or middle-aged people. It's across the board, age-wise. It has no limits on age, it has no limit on race, it has no limit on culture. And I think that not to affect them, you must bring the knowledge to let them know that, hey, we are approaching this subject because it doesn't just affect middle-aged adults, young adults, and kids. It also affects you as well. And honestly, I found that to be so helpful when you let them know up front. We're not trying to take away your security from the church being a place where certain things are not talked about. We're trying to let you know that we want to keep that security, but things are going on. And so you have to be go back to compassion and understand, and also language. How you approach the older generation has a lot to do with how they receive it.
Pastor Chief.
Yes, I'd simply say even the same in adding to that. It just takes time after building a relationship with the seniors and having them grow to a place of realizing that we mean the best for them, even their younger generations and even leadership, that it requires even them to buy into the understanding that we need their leadership. I think Titus 2 talks about the wisdom of women, certain women who are older, to pour into the younger. From that kind of perspective, we need your help to pour into the younger ones, not necessarily to correct them in a manner that pushes them away, but to help just pour into some of the mistakes you've made through life, and not to be afraid to share from that level. But even as Dr. Brooks mentioning that you're not exempt from this, so we need you healthy as well. At the same time, we need your wisdom. So I would approach it, me personally, I can speak for myself, and have approached it from the manner of, I need you on board with me to help me move this forward, because it's affecting generations rapidly. And so I need your generation to help another generation to survive.
Absolutely, that was great. Ms. Terrell, where do we begin to have these conversations about HIV awareness?
One of the things I like to say is you can begin at home, talking with your children in the same manner that you would talk with them about sex or don't use drugs. You can encourage them to protect themselves, tell them what HIV is, how it's spread, give them the basics on it. Some school districts do have it start in middle school, some start in high school, where they give the information, and some don't. But we can't always rely on the schools to teach things to our children. So I would say you would need to begin at home for that age group. Have the same open discussions that you would have with them regarding sex and drug use.
So what age would you suggest that these conversations begin? I understand that, children would not necessarily need the same information that teenagers need, but if you're going to start having conversations, they need to start somewhere and build. What age would you suggest that these conversations even begin in the household?
I wouldn't say, I don't have a specific age that I would say. Your child, the 12-year-old girl may be more mature than the 12-year-old boy. So I wouldn't say a specific age. When you feel like your child is ready for the sex conversation, that could be a part of it. Some kids are ready at 12, some aren't ready till they're about 14. But I think it just depends on the child. You will know when your child is ready for certain conversations, or if you feel something has happened, or if they come and ask you about it. That's an open door to sit down and start talking.
But you said that schools are having these conversations.
Yes, there are school districts that do have an HIV component, and there's, I don't want to call it sex education classes, human development. They have different names for them.
Family education.
Family education and stuff like that. But there are schools in Virginia that I know that have an HIV component to it.
Now, are these programs that parents have to buy into for them to have these talks with?
They can opt out. Within Fairfax County, with certain curriculums, the parents are given an opportunity to opt their children out before certain things are talked about within the class. If they're being discussed, the parents are able to view it before and opt their child out if they don't want their child. So yes, it is strictly up to the parents.
Great. Well, it's been great to have you with us today. This has been a great show, and I pray that our viewers are more enlightened about this subject. We look forward to seeing you again real soon. For more information on this segment of Heart to Heart or Denise Wilson Ministries, go to www.denisewilson.org. From my heart to yours, God bless.